Well, Tom, although they never played in the USFL Championship Game, there was a USFL team that played right here on this field, and we called it Bandit Ball.
Bandit Ball. First and 10, do it again. Bandit Ball. Bandit Ball. Hit 'em a lick, make it stick. Bandit Ball.
Well, Tom, I don't think there was any question, from burning mortgages to horses riding on the field to Hollywood stars waving down from the press box, nobody had an idea when they arrived for the first ever Bandit Ball game what was about to happen.
What John Bassett did as the principal owner was magical. He brought in Jim McVeigh to help produce it, but he also had Steve Archie and he had Burt Reynolds as a co-owner, and that was truly magic.
But it was his coach that perhaps produced the greatest magic, and still does.
John Bassett went up to Duke and hired Steve Spurrier to be his head coach. And Steve Spurrier became what he is now at the University of Florida because he had this practice area, the Bandits.
Shoot, I can remember about all those games down there, to tell you the truth. Of course, the first game against the Boston Breakers, we opened up no-huddle offense, and the fans, they had no idea that was going to happen, and so it was something different for them. We didn't score that first drive, but I think John Reeves hit Willie Gillespie for the winning touchdown. I think we beat him like 21-14, something like that.
But then in 1986, Bandit Ball was dead, but they weren't alone. The entire USFL folded, but that gave an opportunity for college bowl games to come back into Tampa Stadium. And it's important, Tom, that we say they came back because there had been previous bowls.
Had been indeed. Had the American Bowl, the All-American Bowl, and the Can-American Bowl, and we've had some of the great college stars here.
Well, Tom, there were some great players, of course, but I think we ought to bring out, when we talk about #1 picks and things of that kind, in 1984 there was a memorable game with an awful lot of picks.
We knew there were great players on the field. We didn't know until later how many there were. And I counted it about 4 years later. There were 17 #1 picks on the field in that Florida-Miami game in 1984. 52 of those people signed pro contracts. Staggering. It'll never happen again.
It certainly won't, but it happened right here at what was then Tampa Stadium. And of course, there were other games to be talked about here. An annual classic became a very popular game, the Florida Classic.
Actually, the Florida Classic began when the University of Tampa played Florida A&M here with Jake Gaither and Fran Kersey. That was the first time that A&M got to come down here. Then they came down and began to play other teams and eventually started the Classic by playing Bethune-Cookman here on a regular basis, and it was indeed a fine affair.
And it was one that got tremendous returns every time, everybody coming out as much to see the bands as anything else.
They did indeed. They made a lot of money here.
This is true. Tom, from there, we have to talk about the Outback Bowl because that certainly came into its own. First the Hall of Fame, then it went to Outback.
You know, the late Marcelino Huerta doesn't get enough credit. He's the old coach at the University of Tampa, but he pursued that Hall of Fame game with the NCAA more than anybody. And then he got some friends interested in it like John Adcock and Jim Urbanski, and we got it as the Hall of Fame game with the National Football Foundation and Hall of Fame as the sponsors. And the Outback people came in, and you know what's happened since then.
It has become a major bowl, and now every New Year's Day, first bowl game that's on TV is the Hall of Fame, now Outback Bowl, and it's the one that goes across the country, and everybody gets to sit back as they gather their strength for the first day of the new year.
Flat out ball, and there is the biggest hit maybe of the 1989-90 bowl season.
New Year's Day in Tampa Bay. It's become quite a tradition.
Gene Stallings wins his 70th game as the head coach at the University of Alabama.
Tampa Stadium has seen its share of outstanding collegiate performances.
Schuler, quarterback draw. What a move inside the 10-5, touchdown.
Gracie hit, and the ball is intercepted by Rudd. And Rudd may score. There are no flags on the field. We'll count it off. 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Dwayne Rudd. Alexander is off to the races. Touchdown, Michigan.
And Tom, ironically, last fall, almost 30 years since the dedication of Tampa Stadium, the dreams of college football for that group of USF students became a reality. USF football was born right here and will continue in the Raymond James Stadium right next door.
Well, Tom, I think everybody that knows the history of the stadium probably knows this fact, but you and I know it very well, and that is that the first professional team to play in this stadium was not, and we're talking regular season here, was not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
No, it was a soccer team, the Tampa Bay Rowdies.
Football of a different kind.
F-U-T-B-O-L, is that it? Absolutely, but it was the Buccaneers that caught Bo Rogers' eye in Philadelphia. He said, if they're moving to Tampa, the NFL, we need to go to Tampa. And he came down here and got himself an owner named George Strawbridge, as you well know, established a team and played their first season here, the first professional team of any kind with the Tampa Bay Rowdies.
The Rowdies run here, the Rowdies run there, they kick the ball around. The Rowdies run here, the Rowdies run there, then they fall on the ground. Oh, the Rowdies, the Rowdies, the Rowdies are kicking the grass.
The Rowdies were amazing. They probably to this day stand as the way that sports should be marketed. They drew crowds.
They do crowds. They had some awfully fine marketing people that developed those great slogans to go with them. The Wowdies went with the Rowdies, very good. A kick in the grass, that sort of thing. The Fannies, and you worked the game so well and gave everybody a nickname. Those were special nights with the Rowdies.
Tampa in those days was so untouched by anything, and to have a pro sports team in town, because it was before the Buccaneers, of course, before the Bandits, and they just loved the Rowdies, and it was just a fantastic time. We had great players, you know, Steve Wegerle, Derek Smethurst, Mike Connell, great players to have in your team. The team off the field was Rowdies, the team on the field was Rowdies, and we won, and we kept on winning. And that is part of, I guess, the magic.
If I ask you to pick out one memory from the Rowdies, what would you pick out?
Oh, that's easy. Playing Fort Lauderdale in a shootout. I'm sitting, Jago's sitting right by me over there on the side. It's down, it's 3-3. Rodney Marsh is going to kick. He makes it or he doesn't. It was wet, it was raining, and Gordon, with his English accent, says, I can't look, you look. He got down and faced away from the game. Of course, he made it, and surely he knew.
Well, Rowdies were a fun time, but they became very special at one time of the year, and that is that they kind of established a bit of a tradition for the 4th of July.
Well, they did with the fireworks, and I guess the first was when they brought the Cosmos in here, along with Pelé. We mustn't forget that they brought Pelé in here, and Canaglia, and all the great soccer players around the world. George Best, yes.
And the tradition of world-class soccer continues in the 90s with the Tampa Bay Mutiny. International stars like Carlos Valderrama, as well as top U.S. players like Roy Lassiter, Frankie Hedrick, and Roy Wegerle have adorned the Mutiny colors. Frank Yallop has been there since the start.
Probably going back to opening day when we started out with the Mutiny. You know, it's back in, I think, April of '96 now. You know, it's a good stadium. We like it. We love playing here. You know, it's gonna be sad to see it go, but that's the way. You know, that's the way of the future, I guess, for the new stadium.
Well, this is the south end zone we're standing in here, and here, Tom, a lot happened that was not sports. If you had to draw it back on your memory, what do you remember?
Well, I remember Last Tango in Tampa, which was a big wrestling show with all the old guys.
The originals.
Original.
The ones, because this was a wrestling capital at that time.
It was. That's where everything started.
Well, Tom, there were also lots of concerts here, too. Pink Floyd was here 4 times, and the Eagles and Led Zeppelin each appeared 3 times. Of course, the last Led Zeppelin was stopped by rain, and after police and fans clashed, there was a ban on concerts that lasted 2.5 years. During the 80s and 90s, virtually every major tour played here at the stadium.
See, you remember the Led Zeppelin, and I remember Billy Graham's revival, which was here, and which absolutely packed this place and packed this field with converts.
Here you had Billy Graham come in here and literally pack it like a church, and here he is coming back.
Ah, that was 1979. Any significance there?
By golly, we'll take it if it is, because that was the championship year for the Bucs, wasn't it?
Indeed. Now, don't forget the tractor pulls and the truck competitions that were here. It packed the place again with good crowds. I also remember the horse jumping, the stadium jumping on the American Invitational, which was just so dramatic. It was so beautiful. It set the precedent, set the stage for stadium jumping all over America.
But Tom, I think of all the things, along with Super Bowl 25 and the great thing we went through with Desert Storm, we had a hero in our midst, and it was right here at Tampa Stadium that the people of the Tampa Bay area, as well as the nation and the world, could say thanks to this man.
General Schwarzkopf. He was honored, and George Steinbrenner chose to be the MC that afternoon for that parade through the city. and the celebration here in the stadium. It was an historic and a very patriotic event.
It was one of those events that literally put the goosebumps on you, and it really brought home the Desert Storm to everybody. And I think it really gave the people a chance to feel a part of it and also to be very proud of someone who lived in this area. Well, Tom, it's been 30 great years and a lot of memories in this stadium, and I think a lot of people are really going to realize how many when the stadium comes down, but that's the way it goes.
Dick, let's just hope that 30 years from now, when you and I are doing a final salute to Raymond James Stadium, that we'll have a few more wins from the Buccaneers to talk about.
And let's hope we can say exactly the same thing as I say now. To this grand old lady, thanks for the memories.
Salute.